Okay, do you think it's possible for Miles and Gwen to be together? I mean, there's clearly something going on between them. Even though Miles is from Earth-1610 and Gwen is from Earth-65, they had this instant chemistry and understanding about each other. In the art book for Across the Spider-Verse, they're even called kindred spirits by the film's writer and producer, Chris Miller. And at the end of that film, we're shown that the two of them are somehow connected across the multiverse. Even when they are in different dimensions, somehow they continue to take on risks to be together. Of course, I'd love to see Miles and Gwen establish some kind of relationship at the end of the trilogy, but unfortunately, I don't think it's that simple. Miles and Gwen have all of the normal relationship issues that normal teenagers have, but there's bigger forces keeping them apart. Yes, they are two people with their own lives, and they are two spider people who need to protect their own worlds, but there is also a big risk in them being together. Gwen's life could be at risk if they fall in love.
In every other universe, Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man. And in every other universe, it doesn't end well.
What this means is that the death of Gwen Stacy is supposedly a canon event. You see, traditionally after Spider-Man falls in love with Gwen Stacy, he is unable to save her from one of his greatest enemies. And during Miguel O'Hara's explanation about the Spider-Verse, Gwen is forced to see an example of that event where she dies. For the longest time, I thought Miguel's hesitation of bringing Gwen into the Spider Society was only because of her connection to Miles, since Miguel only saw him as an anomaly. But after realizing that she was the only Spider-Gwen that was recruited to protect the Spider-Verse, I think it also makes sense that Miguel would want to keep Spider-Gwens away because of one dark truth. According to the canon, she is meant to die. I'm sure that's a part of the reason she stayed away from Miles. I mean, if she didn't keep getting closer to him, then how could she fall victim to her canon event? But I don't know if she can really help it. I mean, even before Miles was bitten by a radioactive spider, she was being drawn to him.
My spider sense told me to head to Vision's Academy. Wasn't sure why until I met you.
I'm not necessarily saying they're destined to be together, but they both sense that they have something special between them. I mean, for Miles, it was easy to get a crush on Gwen. As soon as those feelings formed, that was it for him. But for Gwen, it was a big deal that she was able to open up to Miles. After her best friend Peter Parker died in her arms, she struggled to create new friendships. Gwen and Peter were practically family, so the loss was devastating.
You're the only friend I've ever really made after Peter died.
To make matters worse, the divide between Gwen and her father was solidified when Captain Stacy saw Spider-Woman with Peter's body. His manhunt against Spider-Woman drove them apart and further isolated Gwen. But Miles was happy to support her with all of those hardships. He just wanted to be there for her.
If you ever decide to do friends again, I could always open up a slot.
I'll keep you posted.
So sure, it wasn't easy for Miles and Gwen to become friends. I mean, Gwen literally had to be dragged to Miles's dimension by Kingpin's super collider. But now that their bond has formed, there was no going back. It didn't matter that they were literally separated by the invisible barrier between universes. They never stopped thinking about each other. When Gwen went back to Earth-65, she printed out and cherished the photo of her and Miles on the bus ride from Alchemax to Brooklyn. And Miles kept his ticket from that same bus ride, drew Gwen over and over and over again.
Missed you too.
And he longed to study physics so that he could learn how to travel across dimensions. Of course, once Gwen had the ability to go to Miles, though, there were more complications. With the knowledge that Miles wasn't supposed to become Spider-Man in his universe, Miguel O'Hara and Jessica Drew convinced her that it was not a good idea to be around him. The reality was that the Spider Society saw Miles as a mistake, so Gwen stayed away because she didn't know how to tell him the truth. But of course, eventually she did go see Miles. She was on a mission. She was told explicitly not to go see Miles, but she went anyway. Even when she had the multiverse at her fingertips, an infinite number of spider people to befriend, and she risked destroying her new life by spending time with Miles, she still went. Gwen's entire life was put at risk to be with Miles, and Miles did the same thing to be with Gwen. When Miles discovered that Gwen was hunting down the spot, he left his home behind so that he could follow her into another dimension. Miles wanted to be there to help her fight the multiversal threat. He just couldn't let her go.
We make a good team. Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, even when they both arrived on Earth 2099, they were showing their feelings for one another in the way they both, not so subtly, were jealous of their interactions with other people. Miles was a little worried about Gwen's relationship with Hobie, and Gwen was happy to drag Miles away from talking up Spider-Bite. In some ways, they were just normal, insecure teenagers, but at their core, they knew they had a special bond.
You and me, it's...
We're the same.
And it wasn't just clear to them. Rio Morales saw right through Miles when she saw him interact with Gwen.
What is he even thinking being with her?
I have some ideas. Saw the way he lit up around her.
Sure, Gwen made Rio feel a little protective of Miles, but it came from a place of love and the knowledge that her son clearly had strong feelings for this new girl. But even though there's a connection between Miles and Gwen, can they figure out how to be together, or will their feelings eventually lead them to tragedy? Well, Miles has always believed that there has to be a solution to every problem. Even when he was aware of what has traditionally happened to Gwen in other universes, he's the one to suggest.
Well, it's the first time for everything, right?
But Gwen didn't believe that at first because she had put her faith into Miguel O'Hara's understanding of the Spider-Verse. She thought that canon events had to occur to keep universes from unraveling. Gwen accepted the fact that she would die if she fell in love with Miles. But eventually, another canon event that wouldn't play out inevitably shifted her beliefs. You see, Gwen was led to believe that her father would have to die since he was the captain of the police force in her New York City. But when she was sent home, she discovered that he had quit, which meant that her father avoided that canon event. While Gwen had begun to rebel and question Miguel O'Hara's view on the multiverse, it was truly when she discovered that her dad had escaped the death he seemed destined to face that Gwen's hope for her own future was restored.
One thing I learned from Miles, it's all possible.
Yes, currently Miles is upset with Gwen for hurting him. He knows that she stayed away for months and refused to tell him the truth about his place in the Spider-Verse. But now she clearly regrets that decision and is done with the Spider Society. I think Gwen will apologize for her mistakes, and it's hard for me to imagine that Miles won't forgive her in the next film. At one point, Gwen thought it would be impossible for her to fall in love with Miles. But now as she assembles a team to save him and his family, it's clear that Gwen is unafraid of the consequences that are going to come their way. Miguel speaks about the future as if it's already written, and he acts like all universes that don't follow the same path are destined to die. But I think Miles and Gwen are going to fight against those beliefs so that they can save their friends, their families, and their connection. And when Miles and Gwen successfully save everyone they love, I think they will finally be together. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments along with any other ideas you have for future videos. And finally, thanks for watching and have a magical day.